We Talk Malts.
Äußerst spannend. Sollte man probieren.
Wir drei sind auf jeden Fall Scotch-Trinker, oder?
Double Oak, doppelt gut.
Doppelt geeignet.
Ich biete meinen Gästen auch nichts an, was ich nicht selber trinken würde.
Das, was ich Weihnachten trinke, das ist mein Weihnachtswhisky.
Absoluter Erwachsenengeschmack, vor allem weltweit.
Am Ende zählt, schmeckt's oder schmeckt's nicht.
Einen wunderschönen guten Abend. Willkommen zu We Talk Malts, Spezialfolge 2. Ich bin Malte, ich bin heute ganz alleine. Vielleicht Marc kommt vielleicht später noch dazu. Flo ist heute auf jeden Fall raus, aus Arbeitstermingründen leider. Aber erstmal schön, dass ihr da seid, dass wir gemeinsam uns heute angucken, was Glenlivet so vorstellt mit seinem neuen Licensed Dram. Vielleicht ein, zwei Worte einfach zum Ablauf heute. Um 18 Uhr beginnt offiziell die Vorstellung und es wurde mir erlaubt, das Ganze zu restreamen sozusagen. Das heißt aber auch, dass ich zwischendrin das einmal kurz anmachen muss, weil ich habe gerade geguckt, noch ist die Besprechung nicht offen. Das müssen wir also gleich erledigen und das ist natürlich ein bisschen schwierig, das alles nebenbei zu machen, wenn ich heute der Einzige bin, der sozusagen da ist. Insofern so um 18 Uhr wird es vielleicht einmal kurz etwas holpriger werden, sage ich mal, weil ich mich dann auch nebenbei um die Technik kümmern muss. Aber ich dachte, wir fangen einfach ein bisschen früher an. Das dauert dann bestimmt auch nochmal 5, 6 Minuten, bis es irgendwie da richtig losgeht. Aber wir fangen ein bisschen früher an, damit ich euch einfach mal so ein bisschen zeige, was ist im Vorfeld passiert, was wurde mir geschickt, was wurde mir mitgeteilt. So, ich dachte, es wäre einfach mal ein ganz schöner Moment, um zu zeigen, wie es eigentlich so abläuft, weil es ja immer wieder dieses Vorurteil gibt, dass jemand, der was geschickt bekommt, dann irgendwie gekauft wird oder so. Und ich wollte euch einfach mal zeigen, dass das eigentlich nicht der Fall ist. Also, was habe ich vor mir? Worauf gucke ich die ganze Zeit schon? Ich habe so ein kleines Anschreiben bekommen. Da erzähle ich euch gleich, was hier drauf steht und zeige es auch in der Kamera. Und ich habe eine Flasche schon von dem neuen Licensed Dram bekommen, wie man sieht. Ich schütte die mal. So viel ist noch nicht raus. Man könnte fast sagen, ich habe ihn noch nicht probiert, denn der Rest ist hier in meinem Glas eingeschenkt. Und ja, die Flasche hat noch eine Umverpackung. Das war's aber auch. Das ist das, was ich im Vorfeld bekommen habe und halt eine E-Mail mit dem Einladungslink, wo wir uns dann in 10 Minuten einfach mal einklinken werden. Dann werde ich den Bildschirm teilen und wir gucken uns das mal gemeinsam an. Ja, was steht hier auf diesen Zetteln drauf? Also das ist wirklich alles, was ich bekommen habe. Da ist jetzt nicht großartig noch irgendwie, bitte schreibt das, bitte schreibt dieses. Also das erste ist so ein Übersichtszettel, der ist auf der einen Seite wirklich einfach nur eine Abbildung und auf der anderen Seite so ein paar kleine Key Facts. Ich fange da mal oben an. Also ein Whisky, der ganz neue Maßstäbe setzt, schreibt man hier. Und es geht darum, dass Glenlivet 1823 als erste Brennerei in der Region Spezial die Lizenz zum Brennen bekommen hat und damit sozusagen die Erfolgsgeschichte losging. Und dieser Licensed Dram, der natürlich dann an dieser Brennerei-Lizenz sich orientiert, der soll sich am Lebenswerk des Gründers und Whisky-Pioniers George Smith orientieren. Und die Lizenz gab es halt 1842. Das steht ja auch auf jeder Flasche Glenlivet. Also, es ist die zweite Abfüllung aus der Reihe Original Stories von Glenlivet. Und was hier steht, was ich ganz spannend finde, wo ich auch, falls es später irgendwie eine Nachfragemöglichkeit gibt, nachfragen werde, hier steht, es wurde in First-Fill-Fässern gereift, aber dann nicht welche. Und dann stehen ein paar Tasting Notes da und eine Trinkempfehlung, pur oder auf Eis, naja. Und ganz unten, das finde ich auch ganz spannend, da sieht man, für wen es eigentlich ist noch die Möglichkeit, das Ganze in 5 Lagen A16 Kartons mal 6 Flaschen zu kaufen. Wenn ihr das wollt, habt ihr gerade den Barcode scannen können. Das ist also der erste Zettel. Der zweite Zettel ist einfach so ein bisschen über das Produkt. Könnt ihr jetzt auf Pause stellen, wenn ihr später das Video guckt. Da steht also jetzt auch nichts Großes drauf. Sozusagen ein bisschen ausführlicher das, was gerade in Kürze bei dem anderen stand. Es gibt noch ein kleines Statement vom Master Distiller Alan Winchester. ja, ist halt so ein bisschen Marketing, böse gesagt, bla bla. Nett gesagt, führt es einen ein bisschen ein in die Thematik. Das ist aber wirklich alles. Also der Whisky, 2 kleine Begleitzettel, auf denen auch nicht draufsteht: „Wir bitten euch" oder „Wir bitten dich", irgendwie X oder Y über den Whisky zu schreiben. Jetzt kann man natürlich sagen, wenn man zu sowas eingeladen wird, ja, das, primet ein Jahr, das geht in irgendwie eine bestimmte Richtung oder so. Weiß ich nicht, wie ihr das seht. Ich finde das immer ein bisschen übertrieben, weil ich freue mich drauf. Es wird bestimmt eine schöne, spannende Sache werden. Ich weiß auch nicht genau, was jetzt gleich passiert. Aber das heißt ja nicht, dass ich den Whisky dadurch jetzt irgendwie über den grünen Klee eben irgendwie loben muss oder ähnliches. Genau. Ich habe den, wie gesagt, noch nicht im Glas gehabt. Wenn ihr Fragen habt, könnt ihr sie gerne in den Chat schreiben. Ich werde probieren, die später unterzubringen irgendwie. Das heißt nicht, dass jede Frage beantwortet werden kann. Es werden sicherlich relativ viele Personen eingeladen sein. Da kommt nicht jede Frage dann zur Geltung, aber ich bringe gerne eure Fragen dann auch direkt ein. Ich weiß, dass Ike Thormann da sein wird, also der deutsche Brand Ambassador. Ihr kennt ihn von We Talk Malts. Und ich glaube, es geht auch in die Archive bei Glenlivet. Also wir werden definitiv irgendwie zur Brennerei geschaltet werden. Und ich glaube, das wird doch ganz spannend sein. So, ich komme nicht drum rum, doch mal ein bisschen hier zu schnuppern. Ihr merkt das, bevor es so in 10 Minuten dann hoffentlich losgeht. Von der Farbe her, ich weiß gar nicht, ob hier irgendwo was steht. Von wegen Farbstoff. Wir können ja mal anfangen, den auch ein bisschen auseinanderzunehmen. Hier steht zumindest nichts von Farbstoff auf der Flasche. Genau, First Fill Double Oak, 48%, aber es scheint dann die natürliche Farbe zu sein, die wirklich, ja, ihr seht, ich habe es jetzt schon 2, 3 Mal in die Kamera gehalten, die wirklich sehr angenehm ist. Schöner, ja, so Bernstein, dunklerer Bernsteinton. Und der macht schon ganz ordentlich Power in der Nase. Kommt so mit Orange, trockenen Früchten, kommt der raus. Also ich finde es ein bisschen komisch, dass man schreibt First Fill Fässer und dann nicht näher aufschreibt, was für Fässer. Ich denke mal, es wird ein Großteil Ex-Bourbon sein, aber vielleicht ist da auch ein bisschen Sherry mit drin. Aber das wird uns hoffentlich gleich erzählt werden. Eine Sache, die mich an der Flasche beziehungsweise an der Unverpackung total stört, ich weiß nicht, wer sich das ausgedacht hat, aber es ist nicht nur bei meinem Exemplar so, ist, wenn man sich die anguckt, dann, ja, das ist der Blick von vorne und die geht so hier um die Ecke. Und was das soll, das weiß ich jetzt nicht so genau. Ich finde, das sieht einfach wie schief gedruckt aus. Und ich würde es besser finden, wenn es mitten drauf ist. Also auf der Rückseite sieht man auch, das ist zentriert, da ist jetzt nichts falsch irgendwie. Aber von vorne sehr, sehr komisch schief gedruckt. Ja, das soll anscheinend die Urkunde sein, wo diese License-Urkunde, wo die Brennerei ihre Lizenz erhalten hat. Also eine Kopie davon. So richtig viel ist da nicht zu lesen. Sieht wirklich nach so einer Urkunde aus. Da sind noch ein paar Stempel drauf. Hinten dann wieder Marketing, Verkostungsnotizen und so ein kleines Rad. Ja, spicy soll er sein. Floral, fruchtig. Wenig Toffee und ein bisschen so Raisin steht hier, wahrscheinlich dunkle Früchte damit gemeint. Ja, ich würde mal sagen, ich gucke noch mal, ob ich jetzt schon mal in den Vorraum wenigstens reinkomme. Das heißt, ich muss mal nebenbei ein bisschen rumklicken. Und dann gucken wir mal, ob das funktioniert. Und dann schauen wir mal, was passiert. Wir haben Personen in der Besprechung darüber informiert, dass sie warten. Also die Besprechung scheint jetzt wenigstens live zu sein. Ich mute mich auf jeden Fall mal. Kamera funktioniert eh nicht, weil Windows immer nur auf eine zugreifen kann. Und so in 5 Minuten geht es dann hoffentlich los. Ich warte jetzt einfach mal, dass ich eingelassen werde. Wahrscheinlich lässt man mich erst um Punkt 18 Uhr ein. Da geht es bestimmt vorher auch noch ein bisschen rund. Ja, ich glaube, ich beschäftige mich jetzt einfach mal schon mit dem Whisky, weil wir werden den bestimmt gleich zusammen verkosten, aber immer gut, wenn man schon ein bisschen Eindruck vorher hat. Deswegen machen wir jetzt einfach in der Wartezeit 5 Minuten mal noch ein kleines Verkostungsvideo aus dem Livestream. Also in der Nase, wie gesagt, ziemlich kräftig. Die 48% kommen hier gut durch. Viel so Orange. Ich habe doch auch Toffee. Und ja, hinten drauf stand Spicy. Auf jeden Fall ist der sehr würzig. Also hat wirklich ordentlich Kraft, was jetzt vielleicht nicht nur der Alkohol ist. Ich probiere einfach schon mal, weil wir müssen eh noch gemeinsam warten. Also auf euch. Bis Lange. Und jetzt kommt das, was ich in den Videos immer rausschneide, normalerweise. Das schöne Geschmatze an dem Whisky. Also, der hat einen schönen Körper. Er ist überhaupt nicht so kräftig, wie ich in der Nase jetzt vermutet hatte. Hat viel mehr, ist viel runder. Hat auch eine schöne Süße mit dabei. Definitiv würde ich sagen, mehr Ex-Bourbon. Jetzt werden wir es wahrscheinlich gleich erfahren, ob ich hier euch völlig was vom Pferd erzähle. Ja, Vanille ist da mit drin. Ich probiere nochmal. Ja, Vanille, Toffee, Früchte. Und Axel, du schreibst, der Illicit Still hatte keine Umverpackung. Das stimmt. Den hatte ich damals, das haben wir auch gestreamt, das Event, als Presseflasche. Da hatte er so ein Papier drum wenigstens. Aber ja, der sah ja nicht viel anders aus. Ne? Der kam einfach so in dieser Flasche. Ich weiß nicht, mir persönlich sind Umverpackungen jetzt nicht so wichtig. Dunkle Flasche, glaube ich, wenn der im Regal steht, tut das Sonnenlicht ihm jetzt auch weniger. Aber das stimmt, er hat wenigstens so einen schönen kleinen Pappkarton. Aber ich bin mal gespannt, ob es eine Erklärung gibt, warum das irgendwie so schief draufgedruckt ist. Keine Ahnung, ob das irgendwie einen Grund hat, weil dann die Urkunde irgendwie besser gepasst hat oder woran das liegt. Hat natürlich den Vorteil, dass wenn man mehrere nebeneinander steht, dass es dann irgendwie interessanter aussieht. Kein Plan. Dann kann man halt eine von vorne nehmen und die nächste umdrehen und dann hat man für so einen Schriftzug, der vielleicht ein bisschen größer und ein bisschen weiter ist. Ich weiß es nicht. Andererseits hast du dann den Schriftzug nach links gerückt, weil dann ja noch 2 Buchstaben auf der nächsten Flasche kommen. Ja. Wie macht er sich im Vergleich? Also ich hatte den Illicit Still auch als relativ kräftig tatsächlich in Erinnerung. Die Flasche ist leider schon eine ganze Weile nicht mehr da. Insofern, oh, es tut sich was. So, jetzt muss ich mal ganz kurz, Sekunde, Leute. So, ich muss mich hier einmal kurz muten, weil da wird schon ordentlich geredet in der Besprechung und das ist völlig wahnsinnig. Ich kann nicht reden und gleichzeitig anderen Leuten zuhören. Also, wie macht er sich im Vergleich? Der Illicit war auch kräftig, aber ich hatte bei dem mehr so röstige Aromen abgespeichert. Die habe ich jetzt hier nicht. Hier habe ich mehr Süße. Die kommt jetzt auch in der Nase besser rüber. Ja. Also sie sind, glaube ich, relativ ähnlich. Und der Illicit Still hat mir auch sehr gut gefallen. Ich finde für 40 Euro, das kann ich jetzt schon mal sagen, ist der hier auch wirklich solide bepreist. Das passt. So, gucken wir jetzt, was hier in der Moin Arne. Wir gucken mal, was hier noch passiert, wer sich hier zuklingt. Jetzt kommt so ein bisschen die Phase, sorry, wo ich mich um mehrere Sachen gleichzeitig kümmern muss. Mal ein bisschen schwierig. Ich schiebe das mal so. Euch hier. Jetzt gucken wir mal, ich mache mal den Ton kurz bei mir an. Ja, Es ist noch Begrüßung anscheinend. Jetzt warten wir mal, was da passiert. Ich gucke schon mal, wie ich den Bildschirm teilen kann. Und dann könnt ihr mir ja vielleicht auch gleich eine kurze Rückmeldung geben, ob das alles funktioniert und wie das aussieht. Und zack, das sieht doch gut aus. Also ihr müsst es jetzt sehen. Ihr könnt mir ja mal kurz sagen, ob ihr das hört, was geredet wird. Das wäre super, weil dann klinke ich uns hier wieder raus, dass wir jetzt nicht zu viele Gesichter von anderen Menschen filmen. Ja, genau, mache ich einmal kurz. Ich mute das und mache mich mal wieder groß. Genau, Skype, Zoom-Fenster. Die Frage ist, habt ihr auch Ton gehabt? Das wäre noch ganz wichtig zu wissen. Ansonsten machen wir das nämlich gleich nochmal. Zu hören war nichts, dann weiß ich, woran es lag. Beziehungsweise das einmal so. Zack. Dann testen wir jetzt nochmal. Sagt mir mal, ob ihr jetzt was hört.
Ist da drin?
Oh, ich glaube ja.
Ja, okay.
Sieht's aus.
Weil es mehrmals irgendwie rein-raus ging da.
Ah, ja.
Ja,
Das sieht gut aus.
Ja, gut.
Könnt ihr uns denn alle hören? Da oben ist so ein Button, wer noch MS Teams kennt, da gibt es so einen Daumen nach oben oder ein Herzchen oder Applaus. Nehmt da ruhig reichlich Gebrauch
von. Dann nehme ich die
Jungs
Jungs nochmal raus. Also ihr habt gesehen, wir scheinen irgendwo in den Archiven unterwegs zu sein. Ike ist auf jeden Fall da und ich bequatsche euch jetzt einfach noch ein bisschen. Und dann schalten wir aber gleich rüber da. Und lassen uns mal ein bisschen in die Welt von Glenlivet entführen.
Ja, also ich würde sagen, wir fangen einfach mal an.
Mein kurzes Fazit mal nach 10 Minuten hier mit dem Whisky ist.
Ja.
Also erst einmal herzlich willkommen, da werden bestimmt noch ein paar Nachtrudeln, aber wir wollen uns erstmal kurz vorstellen und sagen, was wir denn heute hier machen. Also
ganz gut bepreist
herzlich willkommen, schön, dass ihr schon mal alle dabei seid. Wir sind jetzt hier eine Runde von knapp 15. Wir erwarten auf jeden Fall noch einen ganzen Schwung. Wir haben einige Flaschen rausgeschickt. Ich hoffe, bei euch sind die
jetzt
Flaschen
redet
alle
Ike gerade ganz viel. Ich glaube,
angekommen.
das ist die Begrüßung. Ich guck mal ganz
Das war jetzt alles im Laufe der letzten Woche. Und wir wollen euch heute präsentieren den neuen Licensed Drum. Was passiert hier? Wir haben 2 internationale Kollegen von uns dabei.
Schalte uns mal live rein, halt selber den Sabbel.
Kerstin ist vom Brandmanagement von Glenlivet in Deutschland. Die stellen sich aber gleich alle nochmal selber vor. Mein Name ist Ike Thormann, ich bin der Whisky Brand Ambassador bei Pernod Ricard und freue mich sehr, dass wir euch einladen durften, hier das 2. Jahr jetzt hintereinander die neue Sonderedition von Glenlivet präsentieren zu dürfen. Ja, freue mich also sehr. Hier strudeln noch ein paar ein. Für euch zur Info, wenn ihr Fragen habt, hier oben gibt es, wenn ihr mal schaut, so ein Button, wo man Fragen stellen kann. Da könnt ihr eine Frage reinschreiben, auf Englisch, auf Deutsch, wir übersetzen das und geben die Fragen so rein. Wenn ihr Fragen allgemein zu Glenlivet habt, könnt ihr gerne auch warten bis zum Schluss. Da machen wir dann so ein bisschen auf dem Mic. Dann könnt ihr auch Mikrofon anmachen und einfach Fragen stellen an Carol oder Chris. Und dann beantworten die natürlich auch sehr gerne. Das hier wird noch live gestreamt bei YouTube über Malte Talks Malts. Das heißt, auch da könnt ihr euch den Mitschnitt selber nochmal angucken. Und auch wir werden das jetzt hier für unsere Kollegen intern aufzeichnen, weil nicht alle können jetzt hier bei der Besprechung teilnehmen. Aber wir werden das nicht veröffentlichen oder hier irgendjemand anprangern. Das heißt, feel free. So dicht kommt ihr da nie wieder ran an irgendwelche Kollegen. Und von daher würde ich sagen, jetzt haben wir es so knapp 5 nach. Ich gebe weiter an Kerstin und dann gehen wir 3 um und freuen uns sehr auf das Tasting mit euch beiden. Also, have fun. See you later.
Ja. Hallo zusammen.
Seid so lieb, macht eure Kamera aus und Ton aus. Alle, die reinkommen, Ton aus, Kamera aus und dann geht's los.
Ja, ich mach einfach mal weiter. Also, mein Name ist Kerstin Oellers und ich bin Senior Brand Manager für die Marke The Glenlivet in Deutschland und eben auch für die Vermarktung in Deutschland zuständig. Unter anderem sorge ich eben auch dafür, dass wir so eine Limited Edition, wie wir sie jetzt hier haben, mit Licensed Dram, in Deutschland haben. Und noch ein paar andere Sachen mache ich. Eine Mediakampagne haben wir aktuell noch draußen und. Alles, was im Handel passiert, etc. Alles in Zusammenarbeit mit Ike. So, ich würde weitergeben. I hand over to Karis.
Hello everyone, my name is Karis Simpson and I am the brand ambassador for the Glenlivet and Ablauf single malt whiskies here in Scotland. So I'm dialing in from Glasgow today, where I'm based, but I regularly travel up to Speyside to our distilleries to host guests and spread the word about our wonderful single malts. Chris, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me along to share with the licensed dram tonight. My name is Chris Brousseau, and I'm the archivist for Chivas Brothers. Chivas Brothers, we have 13 malt distilleries, of which 12 are here in Speyside, and we also have Scapa Distillery. We have Strathclyde Grain Distillery, and I also look after the archive for Beefeater and Plymouth Gin. So the archive is located at the beautiful Strathclyde Distillery. That's where I work. Strathclyde Distillery was established in 1786, the oldest operating distillery in the Highlands of Scotland. So in the archive, we have records going back over 200 years about our history, about our distilleries and our brands. So my job is to conserve that and bring that historical facts to life, bring our heritage to life today. So I have a great job in the archive.
Yeah. Chris, do you have any pictures of the Glenlivet distillery for those guests who have not been there yet? Maybe.
Sure, I have some photos. I'll just share my screen. I don't know how many have been to Glenlivet. Maybe they can clap or something if they have, but I'll show you. I have some pictures here. I'll just go back to the start. Okay. Having a bit of a meltdown here. There we go. Can you see this okay?
Yes.
Yep. So this is the Glenlivet distillery. It's located in the heart of Speyside. I live in Dufftown, which is about 10 miles from there. But even today, it's quite remote. There's only one road going in it from the north, from Dufftown, and there's only one or two roads going down south. So it's contained right in the heart of the Highlands. You can see around the distillery, there's forests and there's mountains, and it's quite isolated today. There's not even that many people living in the area. There's some old castles. So it's quite a remote and beautiful part of Scotland. This is the still house, or Glenlivet has 3 still houses. On the left, the black and white photo, that was from 1978. And at that time, we had 8 stills in the distillery. And then we expanded in 2009, and you'll see on the top right that we had 6 more stills added to the distillery. Glenlivet was doing very well around the world. There was increasing demand for Glenlivet. And in 2018, we added another 14 stills, and you're getting actually the very first look of the new still house. We have very few photos, but it's in operation now for a couple of years. So you can see the brand new still house down on the right. So that brings us to a total of 28 pot stills at Glenlivet Distillery, with an annual production of around 20.1 million litres. So that brings us to one of the highest malt producing distilleries in Scotland. We actually have 29 stills because we have a small still that is actually a licensed still, which I'll show you later. We have about 60,000 casks on site. We have both palletized warehousing and traditional Dunnings warehousing, and all the malt at Glenlivet goes into malt whiskey. So we have some of our whiskey is stored on site. We also store it at our other facilities around Scotland. It's a beautiful area. Growing in the fields is local barley we use for making whiskey. You can see the farmers, the Highland cows, and the Packhorse Bridge. It's just a very beautiful part of the country. And as you travel through, you see all this, the hills and the forests and the rivers. It's just a really nice part of the country. Now, these pictures were not taken 100 years ago. They were taken a few weeks ago. It just shows you the type of area that it is, the climate. It's quite elevated. We had lots of snow there on the weekend. So the Livet Valley is just a lovely place to have a distillery.
Chris, it's small, but on the bottom right, I noticed Smuggler's Trail. Can you tell us what it's about?
Yes, we're going back, since we're celebrating the licensed dram, we'll go back even further. But if you look at this area back before 1824, before George Smith licensed his distillery, it was quite remote. Just about every farmer had their own still. You can see in the top left, a lot of them were just very small stills where they would sneak away from the excise men to make their whiskey in the hills and then get it away on horseback. Others made it in their farm homes. You could see the pictures where they were distilling it in their farm. And it was an ongoing battle with the excise men because they didn't want to get licensed. They felt it was their right to make whiskey, and they basically what they call smuggled it or made it illegally. And then what they would do is they would transfer it on horseback. You can see the small anchors or casks that would have been used. And the people in Glenlivet would have traveled for a couple of days and passed it on to the next group, maybe in Perth or farther south or Stirling. And then they would carry it on to other markets. So it was quite an illegal operation. So the smugglers' trails were developed to get the whiskey out of the valley. Because I said there was only one road coming in. So the excise man would stay on the road and wait for the smugglers. So they had to develop all these trails throughout the area that they could get their whiskey out on. Now, why? Why did they smuggle? Well, what happened was there's very high taxes, very high excise duties, and the farmers and the illegal smugglers, they just didn't want to pay the government. They also got a better price. The whiskey made in the Highlands in the small stills got a much better price than lowland whiskey. And I think that's partly because they had more time to make it, but also it might, as you know, whiskey matures faster in a smaller cask. So they were transporting these small casks. So by the time it got to market, it might be 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year before it got to market. So the whiskey had picked up flavor, had picked up color, and picked up taste. So a much higher demand. And we know there was more people in Glenlivet in the old days. As many as 200 illegal stills were operating during this period, 200 illegal stills. So we started a series of special Glenlivet. The first one was called The Illicit Still. And that was basically the first in the story, story of our start before we became legal. And so before we became legal, then George Smith, what happened in 1823, the Excise Act encouraged licensing. It made it easier for the distillers to get a license. So he decided to become legal. And in 1824, he licensed his distillery and became the first licensed distillery in the Livet Valley. So tonight, what we're doing is celebrating this licensed dram on behalf of George Smith being the first licensed distillery in the Livet Valley.
That's fantastic, Chris. I absolutely love those images there that you shared with us. And I love hearing you talk about, the history of the Glenlivet's illicit past. It's just brilliant. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, guys, I think it's time that we get into
thirsty.
Yeah, a little nosing and tasting. Is it time? Of the fantastic licensed dram. So if you haven't already poured yourself a dram, I invite you to do so now. And please feel free to share in the comments what you're experiencing on the nose and on the palate. Now, to give you a little bit of an insight into the makeup of licensed dram, this has been crafted using first fill ex-American and first fill ex-European casks. And it's bottled at a wonderful 48% ABV, so 48% alcohol. Also, it's non-chill filtered, which means that none of the proteins or the fatty acids that were cultivated during production have been stripped out. So some may say that this is the whiskey in its most natural state. Now, when we look into the glass, we're seeing this absolutely stunning golden hue. You getting that there, Chris? Isn't it absolutely beautiful? Yes. It's just shining in the glass there. It's stunning. And this is down to those first fill casks that have been expertly utilised to enhance the Glenlivet spirit during maturation. Let's go in on the nose together, guys.
I'm getting honey almost. Honey?
Slightly, yeah. Wonderful note there, Chris. Slightly fruity for me straight away.
Yeah.
I get strawberry right away, a real hint of strawberry. And a little hint of peach there as well. Are you getting that fruitiness there, Chris?
Yeah, so almost like ripe peaches sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now I get a really specific note from this one. Now laugh at me because it's quite specific. I get creme brulee.
Yes, yeah.
It's vanilla,
like that, I think. Yeah.
Exactly, that rich vanilla custard and that caramelized sugar there. Tim's commented, beautiful nose, fantastic, Tim. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Now, that vanilla and that caramelized sugar, I assume that's coming from the use of that American oak and that creamy sweetness, you know, marrying so perfectly with the delicate tropical Glenlivet distillate. It's just absolutely beautiful. I think it's time to try it on the palate. Cheers, everybody. Sláinte. Absolutely stunning there. That honey note that you got on the nose there, Chris, I get that straight away on the palate. Super sweet.
Almost like getting some vanilla custard. You're coming back to that creme
brulee.
brulee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the note that I get on the palate, and once again, quite specific, but it's Lyle's golden syrup. So light treacle almost, something that you would sort of drizzle over pancakes or porridge or oatmeal. So I don't know in Germany if there's something of the sort there, you know, like a light treacle sort of product that you guys use in Germany.
Wenn ihr Lust habt, schreibt uns doch mal in die Kommentare rein, was ihr denn so riecht und schmeckt. Mal gucken, was bei euch da so alles rauskommt.
Karis, we have one question as well from Davide. He asked about the decision of bottling it at 48.
Yeah.
I can talk to that.
Yeah, yes,
I got actually something very special to show you. I'll just put my gloves on if you don't mind. The question was about the 48%. Well, in the archive, I get involved in providing stories, as I was telling you about, behind our different new products. We talked about the illicit still. So when it came to the archive, when we came up with this particular series, what I want to show you, I got to be careful here. This is the bottle that was used in the archive. It was distilled 1898, bottle in 1925. A lovely bottle. So
look at that.
If you can look at the bottle and you look at, so what we did is we took this bottle as an inspiration for the illicit still and for the licensed dram. Now the reason, so first of all, you've got the color.
Can you do that again, everyone? Bring you in the spotlight.
Yes. Can you see that okay?
I'll turn my camera off. Smile, Chris.
There you go. Hello, everyone.
Perfect. Here we go.
My gloves are getting slippery. I got to put this down. So you can see the similar appearance. It's the same shape of bottle, the same color. So we use this bottle as the inspiration for the illicit still and the licensed dram. Now the question came out about 48%. We wanted to match this style as much as possible. And here, if you can see, it says 15% under proof. Now this is UK proof. UK proof is 57% alcohol by volume. So we take 15% off that and you get 48% alcohol. So we wanted to replicate, as Karis was saying, sort of that style, and that's why we use 48% to try and replicate this oldest whiskey that we had in the archive.
That's fantastic, Chris. I think there's another question there regarding the use of first fill casks. That's an excellent question. So first fill refers to the first time that our whiskey is being aged within that cask. So that cask will have previously held sherry or bourbon. Fantastic question there. And the use of those first fill casks it's got to be expert cask management, because you know those casks can be really influential on that delicate new make spirit. So we do run the risk of overpowering the delicate distillate like the Glenlivet. So it's a real testament to our cask managers and, you know, our director of blending, Sandy Hislop. They nose casks weekly to ensure that the quality is just, you know, top. And I think you can find that within licensed dram. It's just absolutely stunning.
I also see a question here, Karis, about first fill European. What do we mean by first fill European oak? Would it have been ex-sherry casks?
Exactly. Yep. So exactly that would have been ex-sherry and ex-bourbon casks, and the first time that our spirit is being matured within that. So yeah, it's just fantastic. And I think there's some wonderful nosing notes there as well from Benjamin. So I can't read in German, but I think that it looks like you've really got a lot from this dram. So fantastic. Well done.
Maybe
think
Kirsten
we'll
can tell us.
Yeah, I think I will translate it afterwards.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really
that'd be great.
Really nice wording, but I think I can't translate it exactly because there are really nice words used. So
Tim looks like he's done a really brilliant job. So on the nose, nice fruitiness of peaches. Absolutely, Tim.
He's getting the vanilla, honey.
Yeah.
It is a bit spicy, almost like gingerbread or something, or
Absolutely.
cinnamon. It's a bit. Somebody picked
I
up
get the
spices.
spice on the finish. I don't necessarily find it on the nose straight away or on the palate, but after I let it sit there, there's a sort of peppery spice, and that that's that wood influence, that first fill cask coming in so nicely. Fantastic notes there, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, Benjamin told us about ginger and the
Yes.
cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's the spicy part, maybe.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
You're very welcome. Great questions, guys.
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe I'm really interested in the difference between illicit still, because illicit still was our first limited edition and our first release. And what exactly is the difference between both?
That's a fantastic question, Kirsten. So for all of those interested and for all of those who have enjoyed illicit still, as well as our new licensed dram is showcasing those first fill casks. So 48% ABV as well, non-chill filtered, but it's those first fill casks that are of the utmost importance within licensed dram here. So yeah, fantastic question. It's all about the cask with this one.
You know, I did a nosing at the Whisky Festival a couple of weeks ago, and there's actually several Germans there, and we have the illicit still, we had licensed dram, and they were the regular 12-year-old Glenlivet.
Excellent.
And it was amazing, all three in a row, and everybody said they're all completely different. 12-year-old whiskeys, the same distillery, the same way it's made, and yet three different whiskeys, just the way we adjust the wood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's something about illicit still, if we're talking about the flavor notes and what we get from that, something about illicit still is really tropical, really fresh. There's something quite summery about it. This one here, completely different. I find that there's not that much of the tropical note, but more of that fruity strawberry that I get straight away on the nose, and then that vanilla sort of custard creme brulee. So like you said, Chris, fantastic drams from the same distillery, but just showcasing that importance of cask and just how much it can change in maturation. So yeah, what a brilliant tasting, the 12-year-old illicit still and licensed dram.
And then we had a 12-year-old from the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
So that would have been distilled before the floor maltings, when the old floor maltings at Glenlivet and the old coal-fired stills. And again, it was different again, just slightly, but had that Glenlivet, that pineapple and everything. But to have four Glenlivet 12-year-olds in a row and all completely different, it really gives you something to think about and talk about.
How special. That's excellent.
Here's a question.
Yeah, there's a question there for you, Chris. Do you have a favorite story about the distillery that you want to tell us?
Well, I can actually show you. I don't know if it's a good time, Kirsten. I have a few more pictures I could show maybe to answer that question.
Brilliant.
I'm sure here. Here's another question. So actually what I can show you is this is something that has just happened recently, and I'll just share is it okay now, Kirsten, if I show a couple of pictures?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
That's great.
It'll answer the question. I think I see a question here about his favorite. Sorry.
Yeah, there's even a question about the favorite story about the distillery. Okay. So maybe you have some pictures of the old distillery.
Yes, that would be great. I think I can show you this in a minute. Just so it's slow operating here. Okay, can you see my slides okay? That was where I left off. Okay. Yes. Now this is really because I'm an archivist, it's exciting. Okay. This is a map from the 1870s. And if you look in the middle here at the top, this is the Glenlivet distillery that was developed in 1859. George Smith, if you want to go down here to the left, this is the old distillery. So in 1824, he first licensed the distillery actually up the hill, even farther up the hill than the current Glenlivet. So he moved from 1824 down to the current site in 1859. Now this is an amazing site because you're at the highest part of the valley. You could see Exciseman coming for miles. So it's probably the safest place to make whiskey, and it's quite high. But this is very interesting because just in the last month, I got some new pictures to show you. You see on the bottom left, you see something called the chimney. This is a picture from 1924, and it shows the old chimney. So we knew exactly where the the old distillery was. So in October, we went and had at the National Trust of Scotland. We went in and started digging up the site. We knew where the still house was. And you see on the right, this is actually a piece of an excise lock that we found on site. So they would have used that to lock the spirit safe. Now, you can see, this is what I want to show you. They started digging on the site, and we came up with this. This is amazing from an archivist's point of view. This is actually the still house from 1824. So at the top here is the back wall. And then over here on the right, that would have been the spirit still. And over here, sorry, this would have been the wash still over here. Over here in the middle would have been the spirit still. And this is where the spirit safe was. This is where we found the lock. And just as we were going along, we also found what we call a spirit receiver. So a pipe would have come down from the spirit still and collected in this would have been a barrel. So this is amazing. We did this, just the pictures. This is the first time this picture's been shown as well. We just took this in late October. We're going to go back next May, and we're looking for volunteers. So if we'd welcome anybody that wants to come over and help us dig. But this is the still house. And we expect as we move out, we're going to find a lot more artifacts. We found bits and pieces of glass. We found an old bottle that said 6 to the gallon, which means 750 milliliters. So this was quite an amazing find. And I used to say to myself, I'd always like to go and stand on the site where George Smith first made his whiskey. And then not only that, we could actually sit in the still house. It was amazing. This is how it would have looked. This is where the wash still would have been. You see a bit of a door, iron doors we found, and it would have looked like this on the right. Basically a small still, an open fire with what do you use? Peat, coal, wood, whatever they had at the time. And that would have been about the size of the still that George Smith would have used. So this was quite an exciting find. So I think the story behind this is really important because George Smith, he becomes the first licensed distiller in the Glenlivet Valley. That's an historical fact. But it's a story behind it, because when he became licensed, all his neighbors turned against him. And this is a quote. This is actually a quote by George Smith himself. Now, I'll read it in English. You might be able to read it better in English, but it says, "The outlook was an ugly one. I was warned by my neighbors that they meant to burn the new distillery to the ground and me in the heart of it. The laird of Ablauf had presented me with a pair of hair-trigger pistols worth 10 guineas, and they were never out of my belt for years. I let it be known everywhere that I would fight for my place to the last shot. I had a good character as a man of my word." These are quite powerful words. He hired bodyguards. He carried his pistols around. And if you come to the distillery, you can actually see the pistols. So this is a man that had the vision, the courage, and the foresight to become legal, and also the determination to protect his name. And what he did, I don't know, what's my favorite story? I've told about 3 already, but I think over the next 60 years, him and his son, they fought to protect the name of Glenlivet. Because in those days, anybody could use the name Glenlivet. There was no trademark. So he took out advertisements in newspapers, in journals, even on the bottle, it said the only genuine Glenlivet. And finally, in 1884, he took on the rest of the industry. And this is called the indenture, which is in the archive. And to me, this is probably the most important piece of history in the archive. George Smith and his son took everybody else to court. They said, we're the one Glenlivet distillery. But other distillers had called themselves Glenlivet. So after 8 years and 387 court documents, which are in the archive, they ended up with this agreement. It got settled out of court. And what it said is there's going to be one whiskey that call itself Glenlivet, and that's the whiskey made at Glenlivet Distillery. So I think that's, for me, is really important, that, the heritage behind the courage of this man to go forward, to the foresight, the desire to protect his reputation, his whiskey. I think that has to be my favorite story about Glenlivet. It was 60-year struggle to protect their name. So I think that's probably my favorite story in terms of, the passion and the foresight that George Smith had, and the courage to become the first licensed distiller in the Glenlivet Valley.
That's
Okay,
fantastic, Chris. I love that about the warehouse, when we visit the warehouses and you can see on the cask Ablauf Glenlivet. You can still see, and even at the Ablauf distillery, the name is still, the old name is still on the near the roof. It's just fantastic. Yeah,
there was I think as many as 29 distilleries. What the indenture said, there can only be one distillery that can use Glenlivet, but other distilleries could use Glenlivet in their name. And we used to our own distillery, Strathyla Glenlivet, Macallan Glenlivet, Mortlock Glenlivet, Glenburgie Glenlivet, way out in Elgin. There was a lot of different distilleries used the name, and we still see it at Ablauf, as Kara said, because it's still part of the company and it's part of the heritage and it's part of the story.
It's fantastic. They do say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, don't they?
Yeah.
So fantastic. I added some water to my dram, so if anybody
Okay.
else has decided to pop some water in and see how it's changed, feel free. Or if you're enjoying it neat, absolutely fine as well. It's just stunning.
I see David is in for digging. He's coming to help digging next year. Great.
He's
Okay.
going to come.
And we'll give you a bottle of the licensed dram for sure. I guess it's too late to add water, so I'll have to pour another dram, I guess.
Listen, it's all that talking, Chris. You
I
need
know,
to
I'm at
keep
home.
hydrated.
Even you've got a little old Glenlivet water jug.
Oh, that's brilliant. I need to get me one of those. That's fantastic.
You can see when it drops below 48%, it starts, those oils come out. You can see them.
Absolutely. Changing that mouth feel as well. It's absolutely beautiful. It's just stunning.
Good dram.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
What do people think? We got any more comments about it?
Tim was enjoying the hidden whiskey history, which is fantastic. That lock is such a fantastic find.
Yeah. I think when we expand the dig out to with the floor of the distillery, we're going to find all kinds of stuff. Because he would have just taken the old stills, moved them to the new site, and just left everything behind.
Wow.
So I imagine we'll find. So if we're looking for volunteers next May.
It's great.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, Chris. I was going to ask, is it true that they used to sort of deconstruct the still? So somebody would take the top half and somebody would take the bottom and they'd run in opposite directions to hide.
Well, you can see that on the small still. You might have seen the rivets.
Yes.
Yeah, they would have just taken them apart and they could run with a piece under their arm and get escape from the excise man. There was all kinds of stories what they went through to try and fool up in Ben Rinnes, which is a mountain in the area. There's stories about they see the excise man coming into the valley because there was only one road. And so the ladies would hang up a sheet of washing or something. And then they would see that, as a sheet. Then the next, half a mile away or a kilometer away, they'd hang up another sheet. So by the time the excise man got there, all the illegal distillers put out their fires because that's how they found the still, because of the smoke. So they gave them a chance to put out their fires where their stills were and start the fires in their cottage where it was legal. So there's all kinds of mechanisms to try and fool the excise men.
Fantastic. It's just brilliant. There was a question there about any plans for a new cask strength at Glenlivet, like the Nadura. Chris, do you have any insider information?
There's stuff happening all the time. I'm really not. I can't even tell you what's the next edition of this is going to be. But Glenlivet, we're coming up with several new different series, travel retail series, and there'll be a lot. I'm sure some of these will be cask strength bottlings for sure.
A cask strength fan there.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Nadura's fun. This person, who is it? Nadura. Lovely stuff, isn't it?
But Chris, can you tell us more about the next release?
No.
From the first?
No. We don't know yet. Actually, you could tell me. Okay, when we're going to tell, this is the stories. You can see on the label here about the stories edition, the original stories. So when we started, we thought, where do you start? So we started before 1824 when George Smith was making his whiskey illegally.
Yeah.
So if you do it in time, this became the licensed dram, 1824.
Yeah.
So what do we do next? We could do the indenture, which I'm just talking about. We also have a letter in the archive from Charles Dickens. I'm assuming some of you know Charles Dickens was a famous author. He wrote Christmas Carol, was it? Caris and a few others. We have a letter from Charles Dickens talking about how much he liked Glenlivet. And he was passing it on to one of his, a friend as a baptism gift. So there's going to be, I think we're going to do it chronologically. So we've done before 1824, 1824, and then we'll pick something. Maybe the new distillery, maybe the Charles Dickens letter, maybe the indenture. We got lots of stories to tell.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Looking for this.
That's fantastic. We've got a question there, about the labeling on the packaging.
Which one now? You mean the is the question about the box or the label?
Yeah, I think so. Slightly off to the right. It's the box.
The box, yes. Okay. Actually, watch this.
Is it?
Put these together.
That's
And
why.
it's together, yeah.
It actually comes
There you
together.
But you can put 4 aside,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So this actually is the license. One of the things in the archive, when they put something on the box, I want to make sure it's right, okay? Because we have to back up everything we put in there. So this is an actual backdrop of a license. So to get it to fit around the box, it just made it, so you could have the license all the way around the box. I think that was just done to make it look more authentic as opposed to just having the license itself on the box. So I think that's why, and it looks good on the shelf if you stack them up properly. You can read the story. So I think that's it.
I love it. I love that they have used the license on the pack. It's just fantastic. It's really cool.
Now we also know that it was only November. What did we pick? November 11th, was it?
Yep.
November 13th. Yeah, we have a letter in the archive that was written November 10th, 1824. It's to the Duke of Gordon, and he says George Smith was to go to Elgin this week to license the distillery. So we know that that was a Wednesday in 1824. So we know that either Thursday or Friday, so November 12th or 13th, was when he first got his license. And partly because the annual license renewal was at the end of October. So he wouldn't have gone before that because he would have had to pay for a year's license. So it's just early November 1824. And that was not the original license, but one of the first licenses.
Fantastic. It's just amazing that we've got access to all of that history about the Glenlivet, isn't it? It's just, and those images you have as well. My favorite image that you show, Chris, is the one of the smugglers fighting.
Yeah.
In the kilt. I just love that. It just really demonstrates, that it was just what hard times. It's just
and it was
amazing.
also that we actually have that painting in the archive, the original. We got at an auction. It's a great painting, and we think about all the men fighting, but the women are in there just as well. I mean, this was a family affair. They used to have runners, which were the kids, the teenagers. Once the excise men were coming, they passed on messages. So you had the young lads running to the next farm to tell them about the excise man coming. The women were involved in making the whiskey. They were involved in shipping the whiskey. They were involved in fighting the excise man. They could throw a rock just as good as any man could. So it was a family affair. It wasn't just the men off in a corner, trying to make whiskey. The whole family was involved because they felt it was their right.
Absolutely.
I mean, they've been doing this for years, and the government comes in with all these high taxes and everything.
Chris is now frozen.
Oh, maybe I'll put my camera.
I think we just lost somebody.
It's the storm.
Oh, you're back. Okay, I think you're back.
You there, Chris?
Okay.
Yes.
Chris,
Still
I
there,
love
Karis?
very much.
Yep.
Chris, I love very much the images of the ruins of the old distillery. So
yeah.
When did you discover it? I mean,
sorry?
When did you discover the ruin of the old distillery?
Yeah, I on the presentation I showed you the map where the old distillery was.
Yeah.
So in 1994, the National Trust actually did a survey, so they knew pretty well exactly where the distillery was. So the same person in last month, he was still with the National Trust, so we knew exactly where it was, and all you could see was turf and grass growing, but you could see the water where they'd used the water, the pond. So they just started digging up the turf, like you know what I mean by turf, the ground, the grass,
of course.
and underneath they started to expose the stones. And because of the old survey, he pretty well knew exactly where everything was, and he's got it all labeled out where the buildings were. So we started at the still house. They did some digs around it to find different parts of the distillery. So we knew where it was, but it was just amazing to hit it. I mean, bang on the still wall, there's two stills, the spirit's safe. And to come this way again, I think we're going to find a lot more artifacts next year. We might find some other bottles and bits and pieces. So we're really lucky to have that archaeological survey that was done 30 years ago.
Really fantastic to see. For us, the very first time, I think for Ike, it's the same.
That's the first time for us. We just got this photo. I just got the photo for this presentation a couple of days ago. So I really wanted to show you because for me, it's really exciting part of the history to actually see this old distillery up on the hill in 1824. You just sit up there and it feels so The atmosphere is amazing. You just look around and you think about the history. It almost brings a tear to your eye. Really, it does when you think about it.
And Chris, just a question from me out of nosiness. Are we going to build a bothy on the hill at the old distillery?
There's plans, yes, I understand there's plans to build a bothy where you can come and stay, I think,
Yeah.
overnight.
So
And
guys,
be near the site.
that
That
would
would
just
be
be
great.
fantastic, because
Yeah.
for those that don't know, a bothy is like a small cottage, a small house, and that's exactly where George Smith, our founder,
Yeah.
would have distilled his spirit, up on the hills. So yeah, plans to maybe build a small cottage, a small bothy, and use it for tastings and guest
Yeah.
visits. I just think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And the new distillery, the visitor center has all been redone over the last 2 or 3 years. During COVID lockdown, they managed to redo it. So those of you that have been to the distillery, it's completely not brand new, but the whole visitor center is new, and we've got lots of artifacts from the archive, lots of stories, some really good tastings. So it's really so I really encourage people, once they can get traveling again, that they can come over. Matter of fact, when I did the Whisky Festival in September, there was a group of 8 Germans, and then there was a couple more. So I think there were more over half are Germans that were at the tasting at the distillery in September, which was nice. It's nice to have people back. I mean,
Isn't
Teams
it?
is fine. Teams is fine and Zoom is fine, but when you can have people sitting at a table sharing a drama, it's much better than,
Absolutely.
because you can really share it that way.
You're totally right. And whiskey's made for sharing, isn't it?
Yes.
It's just the best. Fantastic. Oh, glad you like the idea. I know I'm really hoping that in the new year, now it's too snowy, there's too much snow to start
Yeah.
building, but
Yeah.
hopefully in the new year we can push to get that
Yeah.
bothy built. So yeah.
So, Karis, what do you like the most? You've been with the company for how long now?
Yeah, so
Uh,
I started in July. I've
So
just
what do
been
you
with
like
the
about?
company for
So you must be pretty excited to be able to work with Glenlivet of all the distilleries. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's such an honor to be able to represent Glenlivet. I mean, I'm from Inverness originally, so not far from the Glenlivet distillery, about an hour. So yeah, I've grown up around distilleries and knowing that, the importance that they have for Scotland, and, the people that live there. So yeah, I'm so proud to be able to
Yeah.
represent such an incredible single malt. It's fantastic. And to join exactly when the distillery was refurbished. That was so exciting. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was
It's great.
brilliant. So yeah, super exciting times. It's only been a few months, but already a wonderful first launch. I think I'd be crazy to say I'm not enjoying myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
I know. Exactly. How long have you been with the company, Chris? Remind me.
I come over from Canada. That's why I don't have a Scottish accent. I'm a Canadian. I came over in 2008. I was a biologist for the government, but I loved whiskey. I did a whiskey trivia game. Actually, you can see it up on the shelf at one time. And I started working right away at Strathisla Distillery as a tour guide, and at Ablauf and at Glenlivet. And then the archive project started in 2010. So I've been there at Strathisla since 2010. And it's just great because we've got, I said, 200 years of history in that archive, and we've got about 2,000 bottles. And I even have a bottle of Glenlivet, believe it or not, that was distilled. I don't have it with me, and the bottle's not fancy because it's a new bottle. That was distilled in 1855. Now, if you remember what I said, the distillery went from Glenlivet in 1824 down to the new distillery in 1859. So this whiskey would have been made by George Smith at the distillery, the original distillery. So that's the oldest whiskey I have in the archive. But and then I've got, obviously, well, I won't hold it up again. Let's have my gloves on. But I've also
Get your
got
gloves on.
this bottle, and we've also got several bottles when Glenlivet first went into the U.S. After Prohibition. It was the first single malt to really go into the U.S. after Prohibition, and we see that it went on. It's called itself unblended all malt whiskey because at that time the market was all blended whiskey. And then they went to an age statement of 12 years, and that's stuck like that ever since. So, so Glenlivet has been going around the world. I talked about the indenture before. When it was trademarked around the world. Our first record of Glenlivet in the U.S. is 1840. So it goes back. It was already becoming known around the world. So it's quite an amazing story.
Fantastic.
But Chris, is there still a liquid in the bottle that you've shown?
Yes. The old one? Oh, the one
This
here I'm
one,
showing you?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll hold it up for you. Now, the reason it's down a bit is because I got thirsty. I mean, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's up just above the label. Can you see that? Just at the label?
No. Oh, yeah, I see it.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I see
Now,
it.
the reason, you see the top on here, the sort of the plastic top or whatever it is, that's just due to evaporation. So when I got in the archive, we thought there's evaporation taking place. So we thought we better try and seal that so we don't lose any more of it.
It's just amazing. Look at that label.
Yeah, it's lovely.
You taste it, Chris? You already have to taste it? No.
Keep my fingers crossed. No, I never tasted it. No. No, I haven't. This actually bottle, if any movie buffs, there's a movie called The Mummy back in late 1990s. And I don't know if it was a German movie or it was in German, but they were sitting around the campfire. And this was a model of a bottle they used in that movie. And what we did, there's before my time, but they took pictures of it and sent it down to the studio. And so this bottle has been in the movies as well.
It's amazing. And you say that it's evaporation. I don't know if I believe you.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, interestingly, I gotta quit talking here. People may have questions. The bottle from 1855, there was a small sample with it, and we sent it to the lab, and we have our Shivas Brothers lab in Keith, and it looked like it was put from a cask put into this bottle in 1938, but pineapple came through. I mean, if you talk about today, and anybody talks about Glenlivet, the regular 12-year-old, they say pineapple.
Pineapple.
I mean, that's amazing when you think about it.
That's amazing.
Water, barley, yeast.
I know.
Yeah.
And you get that as soon as you go into the distillery. You know, you're right next to the stills, and you get that smell straight away. It's just incredible. And you know, that translates so well with all these different expressions, all these different cask types, because they're constantly innovating as well. I mean, I'm sure that people in the audience will have tried the Caribbean Reserve. You know, they're now using rum casks to selectively finish. It's just amazing the way that it's going and utilizing that sort of tropical, delicate new make and just turning it into something so incredible and so special. So
well, there's a lot of experimentation. When I started, there was the Glenlivet, 12, 18, and 21, and a few others. Then you've got Natter that was mentioned. Now there's you got Founders Reserve, Caribbean Reserve, Captain's Reserve. We've got special bottlings at the distillery. Exactly. The door's wide open these days, so it's wonderful to be part of this basic experimentation. To be able to
exactly.
I think before everything was so rigid, nobody wanted to. Deep now everything's wide open to try experiment, which gives us consumers much more variety to sample from and different. That's great.
Absolutely. And things that aren't currently approved by the Scotch Whisky Association. I believe that's the body that you have to go through, the Scotch Whisky Association. Things that aren't currently approved by them. We're still experimenting at the moment just in case that approval comes. So it's fantastic that we're using casks of different types that we're not seeing the whiskey right now, but in many years to come we may see. So keep your eyes out. It's exciting. I don't know if we've got any more questions on the chat there. Feel free to ask questions, guys. Oh, a tequila
cask.
Ooh.
We have a Chivas one, don't we? Chivas Regal.
We do.
Tequila.
If you've tried the Chivas.
Yeah, we have a new Chivas Regal tequila cask.
Yeah. Just
not too long. It was last year, the year before, or even more recent. Yeah.
I believe it was quite recently. It's the extra, isn't it? It's a 13.
Yeah. 13-year-old.
It's wonderful. I've actually got a bottle through in the living room.
Somebody says it is coming soon. Oh no, question mark. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, question mark. So I can't answer that one. Glenlivet tequila cask, Chris. I don't know if you can.
I know we've done it with Chivas Regal, and it's working there, who knows? Yeah. It's nice though that before everybody was too nervous to try this stuff.
Yeah.
I just drinking Jacob's Creek wine that was finished in a whiskey cask the other day. I mean, just the other way around. Yeah.
That's incredible. I need to try that.
Yeah.
Was it red or white?
Red.
Cool.
Finished in a whiskey. Yeah, it was.
That's really
Glenlivet
cool.
tea glass coming soon. Okay.
Excellent. I don't know if there's any more questions, or if anyone's got anything else to say about this wonderful.
Somebody's typing.
Oh, here we go. Is it to be expected that Scotch Whisky Association's regulation on Scotch are going to change anytime soon? Ooh, I'm not privy to that information. Chris, do you know anything?
No, not that I know of, unless there's some what they might do. In 2009, the regulations were completely rewritten, which is really good, by the way, for the industry. Industry worked very closely with the regulators. It just cleared up things about what goes on a label. You know, if you put an age statement, it sounds like it was straightforward, but it wasn't. There was lots of issues around a word like pure Highland malt. What does pure mean and all this? So as far as I know, there hasn't been any major changes, but there could be some tweaks, as Karis has mentioned, as things are coming along and they're experimenting. They might do a bit of tweaking to allow some more flexibility, but I don't know anything official offhand, so don't quote me on that.
Super exciting times, though.
Yeah.
You know, for innovation.
So I think there come some more questions, but I think we are done with the normal tasting. So at first, thanks a lot to Karis and Chris for the brilliant tasting. Tastes amazing. Thanks for your questions. So when you're fine, you can go out now from the chat. But when you have questions, you can open your camera, you can open your mic. We can drink a dram together. And at first, cheers and sláinte. Thanks a lot for that.
Sláinte.
Christine, you can open the camera too.
You better open the right one. I better not open the old bottle.
Cheers.
I think everybody can open the camera or the mic and say big thanks to our guests. And feel free to ask questions.
Ja, Leute, da klinken wir uns mal aus, weil Gesichter und andere Sachen von einem geschlossenen Tasting auf YouTube streamen ist sicherlich nicht das Richtige für den Datenschutz.
You're so welcome. Thank you
Das
for
war
having
aber
us.
ja auch
And Sláinte in Scotland we say
ich fand's ganz
Sláinte,
cool,
which
dass
means
alle
good
unsere
health.
Fragen oder eure Fragen
So what do you say in Germany?
sofort eingegangen wurde, auch wie ich finde
Prost.
ausweichend, sondern eine gute Antwort, eine klare Antwort.
Zum Wohl, ja.
Das hier noch mal kurz klein. So, doch, fand ich super. Es ist natürlich so, dass in so einem Tasting alles immer amazing und great und wonderful ist. Ich glaube, daran muss man sich so ein bisschen gewöhnen. Das ist aber auch einfach die englische und noch viel schlimmer die amerikanische Art, wo das vielleicht für uns Deutsche auch einfach ein bisschen krass rüberkommt. Aber ich fand vor allen Dingen die Einblicke irgendwie in die Sachen, die sie da jetzt gefunden haben, ausgraben, doch sehr, sehr spannend. Ich würde sagen, wir machen dann hier auch den Cut und schon Schluss. Vielen Dank, dass ihr reingeschaut habt. Für alle die es später als Podcast hören oder im Video, ich werde das auch noch ein bisschen auseinandernehmen. Das seht ihr dann, dass ihr da hinspringen könnt, wo es für euch interessant ist. Vielen Dank an alle, die live dabei waren. Vielen Dank für eure Fragen. Wir sehen uns bei We Talk Malts demnächst auf jeden Fall wieder, dann auch mit Flo und Marc in gewohnter Runde, auch zu einer gewohnten Zeit an einem Freitag. Dafür auf jeden Fall, ihr kennt es, am besten abonnieren, weil dann werdet ihr informiert. Vielen Dank fürs Reinschauen, heute relativ früh und viel früher als sonst. Bis zum nächsten Mal, Ende der Woche kommt auf jeden Fall noch ein neues Video. Ciao, habt einen schönen Abend, bleibt gesund, passt auf euch auf. Bis dann.